Here's the big story from last night. It's one of the most shockingly offensive stories I've seen. I mean, but I'm not surprised. Gold Star father arrested for State of the Union heckling. Steve Nicoe, how do you pronounce that? Nicoe?
I've been saying Nicoe. I don't know if
Nicoe?
that's right.
51 arrested for heckling Biden during State of the Union. Yeah, but barely. He's a Gold Star dad who lost his son in the 2021 Kabul airport bombing. He was a guest of Florida Rep. Brian Mast, who was outraged by the arrest. So what do they have? What he yelled?
Abbygate.
He yelled Abbygate and United States Marine. And it was not even the most disruptive thing yelled that night. You had people yelling liar at Joe Biden. Nothing. It almost feels like it was intentionally meant to offend the country. Members of Congress, who most people have utter disdain for, yell things all they want. Nothing happens. A guy whose child died serving this nation simply says Abbygate, United States Marine Corps, and he gets criminally charged. They really want us to hate them. That's all I can say.
Yeah, it's terrible optics for the Biden administration. I'm trying to pull the name right now, but this father was there as a guest of another congressman.
Yeah, Brian Mast.
Right. So the fact that this wasn't a secret, Biden knew he was going to be there, and then continues to say, well, it was a great success when we pulled out Afghanistan. It went really well. Good. Like, this is the message that his administration has been telling all of these families, despite the fact that they know differently. They personally suffer the consequences of his ineptitude.
Serge tracked slurs last night. What was it? Was it 100 and what was the final number? 113?
Yeah, 113.
But that was a low estimate because there were some he was.
We were being
that
nice. We were being nice. So here's how we counted it. And y'all were watching. You probably noticed when we were counting. If Joe Biden said something like, we got to go buy the country and we got to get it, we'd be like, okay, there's one or maybe two, depending on how heavy it was. But it really had to be incomprehensible. He'd have to say something like, we've got to determine when the flag goes up, and like, okay, this is a slur. But there were several words where he slurred, but we're like, well, we know what he said. Mm-hmm. So it's our flag. We'd be like, okay, he said flag. We get in the context, so we wouldn't count that. Yeah. I think we easily could have counted 150.
Yeah, and it was multiple per minute. I mean, there wasn't a stretch of time that he was just stumble for. I mean, anyone who's public speaking for a long time is going to make some kind of error. I'm not trying to be harsh.
Fine. I mean,
multiple per minute is kind of ridiculous.
Is 30 acceptable?
No. Well, it also, maybe 6 is when it becomes unacceptable for a president. State of the Union.
Well, it highlights, the special counsel report that said he wasn't mentally fit, right? And how here he is giving the State of the Union. Not really, I think Republicans have set the bar so low for Joe Biden. So anything of him just going and actually, having a complete sentence is actually a positive for him. And that's kind of what we make our mistakes on, because we've been bashing Joe Biden, but so many people, Americans, are not paying attention to every single slip that he's making. And that's what's, but the State of the Union yesterday was really, it was a campaign speech. I mean, the amount of times he was mentioning President Trump, the former president. But this is the radical left. They know that everything is on the line this November. So that's why they're going to go so aggressively using the government's power and the government institutions to go after their political enemies. And that's why they, his son died, and there's never been accountability for what happened in Afghanistan. And yet they go and charge him with a misdemeanor. But nothing with the Gaza protesters who actually, stood and
blocked the motorcade.
Blocked the motorcade. Nothing happened with that. But here, this father who yelled out Abbygate, and you see the media how they say he's heckling him. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that was a heckle. I think that was just an emotional outburst from a father who wants accountability for what happened in Afghanistan.
I put calling out. He called him out because he said murders are down under my administration, and then he yelled United States Marine Corps, and I'm surprised they actually pulled him out of the room, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh wow, they're taking somebody out, because people were yelling to arrest him. The first thing Joe Biden should have done is after this was over, be like, what was it? No, that's gonna look bad for you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So political strategy wise, he should have been like, no, that man is released tonight. Do not do that.
Right. I mean, it goes to show that he had all of these political talking point guests in the box, right? He was like, this lady's tried to get an abortion, this person's part of the union, but he doesn't have any of the family members of these Marines, right? And that's because this is one of the big flaws of his administration. This is one of their biggest failures that they have not been able to negotiate around. I mean, he really put service members in harm's way, and we're on the brink of, what did he say last night? We're going to put up a temporary port in Gaza. I mean, but no boots on the ground, just on the water. He is willing to sacrifice your children even and then lie about it, right? He's not willing to be honest about the dangers that he put service members into and is willing to put them in again.
What did you guys think about the speech overall? Right now you got these Democrat pundits being like, he was strong. There was a video from Joe Scarborough from before the State of the Union that is getting roasted because he's like, this version of Joe Biden is the best version of Joe Biden. He is strong. He is bright. And it reminded me of the scene from Tenacious D with the open mic host. You guys remember? You ever see that movie? Where so in the movie, when Jack Black and Kyle Gass, when Tenacious D go to play for the first time, the open mic host is like, this next band asked me to read this, so okay, whatever. This band, and it's like he's not into it. And then later on, when Jack Black he's sleeping as a dream, open mic host goes, this next band asked me not to read this, but I'm going to read it anyway. This band is the best band ever. That's what it sounded like. Like, clearly Joe Biden is out of his mind, and Joe Scarborough is going on TV, looking at the camera to try and get dead in your eyes and go, Joe Biden is strong. Believe it. And, if you don't watch Joe Biden, you think he is.
Well, it's not just, Joe Scarborough. If you looked at every single media headline, it's really creepy. The regime's media apparatus is nuts. I mean, it's everything said fiery speech over and over and over.
And is that how you describe that speech, fiery? Is that your adjective for this?
It was something. I think there was a lot of gaslighting, if that's fiery. I mean, for him to suggest that the violence is down in our country and crime is down. I mean, all of it was complete lies, but I mean, will the American people actually understand that, or are they just going to be listening to the mainstream media? So it's going to be a challenge, and that's what we're facing right now, is that I don't think we've ever witnessed before a mainstream media regime basically propping up a president. I mean, Biden's not in control of this presidency. We all know that. But the media is carrying the water for him very aggressively.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting position that the media has boxed themselves into, because Joe Biden has been speaking publicly for decades. I mean, you pull video of him on the campaign trail with Obama.
Right.
I bet he would seem stronger or more with it, have more energy than he does now. So how could you say this is the Joe Biden we want when, even 8 years ago, 10 years ago, you have evidence that there is a difference between how he presents. I mean, he's not getting better with time.
No, he's not, as per biology, but he's getting exponentially worse and faster. That commercial we played just before the State of the Union, where it's like, can Joe Biden even survive till 2029? And I think, of course he can't. He's almost 10 years past standard life expectancy.
He can, but I mean, at what value? Like, is he just going to be like, I'm alive?
A human being hypothetically can, and we can extend Joe Biden's life through great leaps in medical technology. But will he be there?
Yeah, he might be alive, but is he really living?
Well, it's like the question of like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? There were people who said that she really should have stepped down way earlier than she did because Obama could have appointed someone, whatever else. And then she died in office. She did not seem like she was in great health towards the end. And yet someone, the powers that be, said, no. Either she herself decided she didn't want to go for the power, which maybe that's why Biden won't step down, or someone in the background was like, I need you to stay in office so I can continue to have whatever form of power I currently control.
And I'm pretty sure they artificially extended her life to the extent of modern science, because wasn't she like disappeared for a while?
Yes.
And everyone's like, what's going on with her? And they probably hooked her up to a bunch of machines where they were like, technically she's alive, so you cannot replace her yet.
Yeah. And
then finally the doctor's like, look, we've done everything we can. This lady is not going to be alive anymore.
This is one of my favorite conspiracy theories. People were like, because I mean, with the Supreme Court justices, their aides do write a lot of their opinions and do a lot of research and stuff like that. So hypothetically, like you had this staff that was like, she is fine. Thank you so much. We're just going to sign her name to this thing for a long time. And it was similar with Dianne Feinstein, who got sick. She had
she didn't even know she was in the hospital.
No, it's crazy. And
funny.
she was absent for so long that Republicans on her committee were like, we would like to replace her.
Well, and it's not even an age issue. I mean, you had Secretary Lloyd Austin, in the hospital. Nobody knew who was running the Pentagon at the time. So we have some real problems where we don't know who's running the government. Well, we do. It's the deep state. It's a swamp. But it's this, mirage of these supposed elected officials or these appointed officials. And that's where I think the American people are really looking into this, and they're realizing like who is in actual control, because our borders open, our election's a mess, we're about to enter World War III. Do we have a competent commander in chief who can lead us there? It's not just the 13 service members who died in Afghanistan with that pullout, but remember the 3 Army Reserve soldiers who died in Jordan. There's so much happening, and Biden never recognized them appropriately in his State of the Union speech because he knows those will, hurt him in an election.
Yeah.
Yeah. Biden, I want to say he's the boss. That's the way I'll phrase it. He's the boss, but no one's in control. I don't think there's anyone telling Biden what to do, and I don't think there's anyone telling his staff what to do. And I think the failures in Afghanistan and the failures of administration are proof that there's no one pulling the strings. A lot of people like to think that Obama is still living in D.C. telling Biden what to do and Biden's a puppet president. I'm like, no. If that were true, there would be cohesive strategy. There would be things happening. It's chaos because Joe Biden is president. He doesn't remember things. He misspeaks, and the staff around him are all just looking at each other like, "What did he just say?" And they're not. There's no cohesive plan. So everything's just chaos. That's it.
Well, if you look at Obama's apparatus is still in the White House. I mean, you had Susan Rice, who was the head of Domestic Policy Council up until May of last year. You have Antony Blinken, all these remnants from the Obama administration. So I think there's no leadership with this administration, and they're just taking advantage of it. But Biden, it's not even an age issue. You see President Trump, he's in his late 70s, and man, he has a lot of energy, right? So, I wouldn't even classify this going after him because of his age. I know people who are in their 90s who are all with it, but Joe Biden clearly isn't.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.